You've had an opportunity to observe the public relations or the practice of public relations over the last 20 years or so. Have you noticed any differences in the way public relations is practiced these days as opposed to maybe 20 years ago or 10?
Well, I think that the obvious answer, but it's so true, is that the pace of the news cycle has changed dramatically. And when I say that, I don't necessarily just mean the external news cycle, but even inside the company. The pace of communication is so much more rapid than it used to be. When I got to Aetna just 11 years ago, we still had a printed company magazine. We don't have such a thing anymore. It's all online, and it's updated several times a day. This is our internal communications vehicle. Several times a day, new stuff is being posted, and it's, we're constantly feeding information. Obviously, the same is true externally, where you've got a 24-hour news cycle, and you can find yourself working on a different story in the afternoon than you were working on in the morning, just because the news cycle has changed that rapidly. And it does change the way you think about the speed with which you have to make decisions, the clarity with which you have to think. The need for calmness is, I think, emphasized. And it's also, I think, fundamentally changing the way constituencies interact with institutions. Some of the things that we were talking about earlier in terms of the crisis of confidence, I think, stem in part from the fact that constituencies are able to sort of self-form in the blogosphere, if you will, and rise up and take points of view that have to be taken into account. And those points of view were always there historically, but it wasn't as easy for constituencies to sort of self-create and become relevant in a relatively short period of time. So it requires for people who are practicing public relations to be very adept at understanding those changes, relating to those constituencies, and being open to them. I'm sorry to go on this, but I think there's some important stuff here. Business organizations historically tend to be a little insular and sometimes even a little arrogant because they feel that they can dictate their own terms. That's less and less true as stakeholders who may not even be direct customers or suppliers rise up and have points of view that can be influential on regulators, on legislators, and on the constituencies that do buy your stock and buy your products. And so the ability to, on a very rapid and sort of 24-hour-a-day basis, stay in touch with multiple constituencies with multiple communications going lots of different directions requires the same skill set, but operating at just, a much higher and quicker level than historically was the case.